Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Joined again once by Quinn. Quinn, how are things?
Meh.
Well, by the time this goes out, you'll probably have your Dr. Voodoo in hand, so that should make you
Yeah.
happier.
It probably will, because my IRL Midnight Suns win rate will probably go up
I
after.
mean, you mean you might win one? Is that
Hey, I went 2-2, which for me is fucking abysmal.
You did go 2-2, yes.
It absolutely fucked my ranking as well. I went from like 6 to like 12. I was like, what the fuck happened here?
Yeah, I think I'm down in 8th at the moment. But
Look how they massacred my boy.
Cool, guys, we're going to carry on with our affiliation videos. This time we're going to be tackling Asgard. But this is the first of the videos that we're recording since we had details of all the new rules regarding rosters. So we're going to implement those changes for the videos moving forward. We may as well. It's what the game will be built on as we go forward. So for those that aren't aware, there's some changes around the number of tactics cards that we can take. So we can now take a total of 10 tactics cards in our roster. Gems have changed, probably the biggest in how they work. So gems no longer take up a roster slot, but they come pre-assigned to a particular character. That means if you want to take Corvus with the reality gem, you don't then have an option to take Corvus without the gem. You've got to play him, so it increases the threat of that character. We can also take multiple characters with the same alias. That means that we can have multiple Tony Starks, we can have multiple Peter Parkers, and we can have multiple Natasha Romanovs. I don't think there's any more at the moment, if I remember correctly. I'm sure there will be.
That's it.
I think that's it. In your roster, but still only fielding one of them in your squad at any one time. But importantly, you are limited to a single character card being used once. So you couldn't take 3 versions of Thanos, for example, with 3 different gem sets. So with all that in mind then, Quinn, let's start off as we usually do with these and take a look at the sole leader of Asgard himself, Thor, Prince of Asgard. Now, I think we both know, don't we, that he is on the list for some tweakage, whether it be...
He's on our list, some tweaking.
He's on our list.
Our list is currently, at present moment of recording, 100% accurate. Yep. Now that Green Goblin has been shown.
Green Goblin has been shown, and, you know, we didn't get everything right on that video, but the core of what we were going to achieve, which is solve his power issues and sort that leadership ability out. The leadership, they did exactly what we said, and his builder increased in exactly the way that we said it would do as well. So, yeah, I'll take that. I think we're 1 for 1. That's pretty good.
It's a win as far as I'm concerned. We are the Norns weaving the fates of MCP now.
So with Thor, I think, and with the whole of Asgard, even if some characters are tweaked, what we're seeing is characters are not being changed so significantly that it changes the way in which they're going to play. The play style is going to be the same. The idea and the core of how you win games with a team is going to remain the same. It's just that those characters are going to be tweaked to just be slightly better at what they already do, isn't it? I think that's the trend that we're seeing from the 6 cards or 5 cards that we've seen so far. So with that in mind then, Thor, Prince of Asgard, 5 threat, 4/4/3, so pretty decent on his defensive stats, 6 and 8 on his stamina. He's very dice dependent, isn't he, in terms of what he does today. We hope that's something they resolve in the future. And then in terms of his leadership ability, Prince of Asgard, it's fairly standard. You get to spend a power. If you do, you can heal 1 or remove 1 special condition. And that can be done by any character once per round and can be done once per turn, and you do that at the beginning of your turn. Affiliation wise and that leadership ability, Quinn, where do you sort of rank that in terms of how it stacks up against everything else?
I think it's a decent one. Like, there are going to be clutch situations where you want to get rid of a stagger, or like 1 health makes a massive difference to someone living or dying. For example, like if someone's been left on 1 health and you heal them for 1, it means that they don't then die to being thrown into someone else, which is like pretty big. It's a decent leadership. It's not like up there with Bump in the Night, because nothing is, but it's still a solid one.
Yeah, I like that it's special condition or heal. As you say, it gives you that flexibility. So Quinn, with that special condition, as there are more characters who can not only dish them out, but trigger things from them, people like Mordor who can almost grenade, and incinerate, or Omega Red who can, do more damage based on poison, or Blade who heals off bleed. Do you think it will become more relevant and could potentially work its way back into the competitive scene, or do you just think it's an okay one?
I mean, I think that will probably be an uptick in its usefulness. I don't know whether that's going to translate to a massive resurgence of Asgard in the competitive scene. I mean, they've always been sort of lauded as one of the stronger factions in the game, but I think that's less so to do with their leadership and more so to do with the Asgardian innate power that obviously all of the Asgardians possess. It just allows you to do a great many things on turn one that other teams just simply can't do.
They don't have access to it. Yeah, absolutely. And we've spoke about turn one plays quite a bit, haven't we? And having a plan for certain crisis and that sort of thing. And these are definitely an affiliation that have that.
Turn one is the easiest turn to plan for, apart from turn zero, obviously. So that is where a great deal of focus lies, because after round one, the board state could look like anything. It's not something you can really plan for. Whereas, round one, you know where everyone stands in terms of power and health and all of that sort of stuff, how the crisis looks. Being able to have a plan for turn one means that you're probably going to be up turn one, which means you're probably going to be up for the rest of the game.
Yeah. And the thing you need for turn one plays is power, and these guys bring an abundance of it, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, we've covered three of the affiliations now, Quinn, and we've had kind of two attrition lists. One that is very much damagey, one that is very much outlasting your opponent in Cabal and Avengers. Obviously, Black Panthers, Wakandans, very, very much a control list. Where would you say that Asgardians fit? Because they've got some big damage dealers, but then they've got those plays with Amora's Kiss. You've got the turn one plays with Angela for the extracts. How would you see them sitting if you had to categorize them?
So I think you can go like one of two ways with Asgard, which is a bit of a cop-out. So you can either go attrition-based or you can go control-based, but a lot of the time you'll see a mix of the two, where someone's attrition won't necessarily be offensively focused, but rather just focused in their own survival. So you've got plenty of tanky characters in Asgard, plenty of high health pools, high defense pools, and you've got the healing from the leadership, plus certain tactics cards that they have available to them. It means that it can be very difficult to shift them without dedicated control options like a Shuri or an opposing Enchantress or whatever it may be. And I think usually what ends up happening is you'll play a crisis where there might be a midline extract, and if your opponent doesn't have an Angela or an Amazing Spider-Man or a Bump of the Night medium base, medium move character, they're usually going to be stood on that middle line, and then Enchantress is just going to walk up to them, give them a smooch, and walk off with whatever it is they had. And I think a great deal of that power lies in Asgard's ability to build tall and therefore control priority and be able to basically get the hell out of dodge when they need to and sort of tank in other places to sort of hold the line for enough time to pass that their extract advantage will end up winning them the game.
Yeah, whenever I come up against, and obviously for me this is typically with my Brotherhood list, but whenever I'm coming up against Asgard, it always feels like my plan is I almost know I'm going to go behind, and then it's how I'm going to get back into that game and which key characters I'm going to target to try and take off the board. But as you say, you can easily fall into the trap, can't you, coming up against them, because you have to dedicate quite a lot of resource. If we look at, and maybe jumping ahead ever so slightly here, but we look at Angela, for example, sister of Thor, 6 and 7 and then falls across the board is you know, she's a hard character to take down, isn't she? Especially when she stops the dice modification and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, like, most of the Asgardians, bar one CP pack, have, like, above average health for their threat, or at least they are on the average with some defensive tech. Like, take Valkyrie, for example. She's a 6-5, which is 1 stamina higher than your average 3 threat. Usually they're 5-5. Enchantress is a 6-6, which is the standard for a 4 threat, but she has extra defensive tech where a lot of the time she's rolling 5 defense dice.
Yeah.
You know, and she can sort of maneuver people around in ways that mean that she doesn't get attacked as often. And then you've got the 5 threats. They're sort of average health stats, but they've got good solid defenses, and they've got mobility abilities as well, which just means that, you know, they can get to where they need to be.
Yeah. So let's round out that list then. So obviously we've got Thor as the sole leader at the moment. I know both me and you are itching to have an all-father character that is a second leader for Asgard, but pack buddies, if you like. We've got VALKYRIE, who is a 3 threat. We've got Loki, who is a 4 threat. HELA, Queen of Hell, who is a 4 threat, and then Angela, a 5 threat, and Enchantress. So not the smallest roster of characters, but there's only 6 of them at the moment who are in affiliation. We've covered off a few of them already, but let's take a look at Thor's counterpart in his pack, Valkyrie, because we've spoke about her and talked about her, and I think she comes up for consideration in most of the lists that we'll be putting together. You just mentioned there her stats are above average for a 3 threat, but for me it's the 2 cost abilities that she's got, Asgardian Might and Charge, that really allow you to do some very, very nice turn 1 plays with her.
Yeah, Asgardian Might being a 2-cost throw when you generate 2 a turn is absolutely phenomenal for just saying, to probably most characters in the game, I think there are a great many more size 2s or less than there are size 3 and above. Just being able to walk up to certain characters and go, no, this is my point now, leave me alone, with a double move and then an Asgardian Might to throw them off the point. Just, you know, it helps you build an early lead, which is probably a common theme you'll see with Asgard, is they build an early lead and then they just sort of ride it out with their toughness.
Yeah. And also being able to throw that character back towards one of your other damage dealers that you've got, whether it's a Thor or an Angela as well. So that repositioning, not just off the point, but throwing you closer to where you want them to be as well, kind of in the danger zone, can be nice. So then on to the second pack that was released, which contained Loki and HELA. HELA, let's start with HELA, because when she was first released, she got a lot of play. She brought something that was very, very different to the game. Falls across the board as a 4 threat is very good. 6-4 on her injured side isn't great, but she does have the Goddess of Death, doesn't she? Which means every time that she would be dazed or KO'd, if she's got 3 tokens, she just comes back, basically, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But she's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, she saw a lot of play in the early days of the game, mainly because of that claim soul attack, because it was just a cheap way to get a mystic attack in the game, which in the early days was really powerful. Less so now with the release of Convocation and Midnight Suns, and sort of we've got a greater saturation of them, and, you know, the defenses against it are better. Yeah, we did see a lot of her, but now she's sort of fallen by the wayside, just because I think she's just a little bit outdated in a sense, in that, you know, she has this whole sort of thing of being very tanky, being able to come back from death. There are just things in the game now that will just go, oh, hey, you have 4 health when you flip, get dazed and get KO'd in 1 attack, you come back, do it again, and it's not something that you can combat really. Unless you, like, save your Odin's Blessing to that point, and then it feels like you're probably over-investing in a character that likely isn't doing enough work anyway.
I was going to say she doesn't do enough when she's around, does she really,
She's
to warrant it?
entirely offense based, which, whilst good in a great many factions, isn't actually preferable in Asgard. You know, they prefer tankiness and sort of subtle control elements, you know, or just sort of crisis focused abilities. Like HELA has no ability to like move herself without an actual move action, no ability to move others. Like, you know, she's not got any sort of that counterplay. She's, you know, of the three pillars, you know, damage, support, control, she only fits into damage. Like, she has no real support and no real control, which is a shame because most models have one strong pillar, then one slightly lesser pillar to sort of prop them up a bit.
Yeah, even if like the Reign of Hell, for example, obviously it's got the explosive on there. Even if it was, you know, even if it pushed characters away short or something like that off the back end of it, there'd at least be something there that you could invest the power in. But yeah, she just doesn't really have anything, does she? On to Loki then, and this is a character who I really want to be really good because I like the uniqueness of this character. First of all, he's one of the few characters in the game who has one of every attack type. So he's got a strike, a fairly standard strike, 5 dice. He's got his Frost Blast, which I think is fairly unique. I don't know if he can be fairly unique, but unusual in this game. It's a 0 cost that isn't a builder. Typically we see nowadays, don't we, that they cost 1 at the very least, but yeah.
I mean, it being like range 3 and 4 dice obviously attributes to its non-existent power cost. Yeah, it is something that is relatively rare.
Yeah. And then lastly, Illusions, which isn't a bad attack. Again, when it came out, it was one of the very, very few mystic attacks that you had. It was 6 strength, it was range 4, only costs 3, which sounds like a lot, but as you say, when you're generating 2 power
when you're an
return,
Asgardian, like it's not as much of an issue. Yeah, that attack always sticks out to me as being just a little bit subpar for what I feel it should be. Like 6 dice on the spender of a 4 threat doesn't feel great, especially when it's got a double symbol trigger. Like the trigger is actually really good. It's just you're very, very unlikely to get it. I don't know what the actual percentage is, but it's not high, to say the least.
Well, and we'll come on to this when we look at the other characters, but one of the things, and we spoke about how Thor is very reliant on dice, you know, he's very reliant on getting those triggers. The one thing that none of the Asgardians have is any form of dice manipulation, is it? I think, you know, Loki can add blanks, but they can't go fishing for the triggers that they need, can they? Because none of them have any reroll abilities. Speaking of him having blanks, I Am a God, I think is a reasonable reactive superpower.
I think it's probably one of the best superpowers on his card, actually, because the amount of damage he can dish out with that ability is it's a step below Reality Corvus. You know, Reality Corvus can count 7 out of 8 faces of a die as successes. Loki can count 6 out of 8, which is pretty damn good.
It's not bad, is it? It's not bad at all. But obviously works on his defense as well. The defense, I like it a little bit less because you have to decide, don't you, before you roll, if you're going to include it or not. But yeah, I gather that's just the payoff. Trickster, again, I think he was probably the first character we saw that had this reactive ability where once they were targeted, they could, you know, move themselves out of the way. Obviously, we've had at least 1, maybe 2 characters since, but I think he was the first.
I mean, we've got Quicksilver and Gwen now, who were sort of the other 2 standout characters, but Loki was the OG in that respect. And, you know, it is a really good ability, but there are just so many ways around it now where, you know, someone will force you to trigger it and then they'll just use some sort of movement or control effect to just get back into range of you and then just do it all over again.
Yeah. And then obviously Asgardian, you know, that's what he does. The one that I really like, and again, it's why I want him to just be a bit better, is God of Mischief. So for anyone that doesn't know, God of Mischief basically creates a range 4 aura around Loki, and on his healthy side means that they must spend 1 power before using a active or reactive superpower. And on his flip side, it gets even better. So they still have to spend that 1 power. And then additionally, when they are rolling for attacks, or if that's any roll of dices, they do not roll, or they do not explode the crits. So if you're attacking or defending or dodging, you don't get to explode any of those crits, which can really hamper your opponent. My problem with them is that we talked about how tanky all of the Asgardians are. If I ever see somebody running Loki, the first thing I do is go and take him out of the game. Because
I mean, like, he's a big irritant, but, you know, because his only source of defensive tech requires him to spend power over and over again, like, you're going to get into situations where he simply just doesn't have enough, or, like, the defensive tech he does have isn't enough anyway. Like, you know, once again, I bring up Odin's Blessing. Odin's Blessing is really good. Like, you know, if you're spending power on defensive tech, then you're probably not gaining enough power to use it, or if you are using it, like, you're sort of in a dilemma where he's probably going down anyway, and then, you know, it just sort of becomes a bit of a moot point with Loki a lot of the time, just because he's missing a little bit of that stamina and a little more in the realm of toughness.
Yeah, I think if he was a 6/6, giving him 12 stamina, he'd be far more viable. But yeah, I mean, do I really want to spend an Odin's Blessing on Loki? That's the question. You know, or that, you know, there's at least 3 other characters on here that I want to save ahead of him. So let's move on to the last pack then that we got, and it's the one that included Angela and Enchantress. Maybe the second best pack ever released in the game in terms of characters and viability and how good they are. There's an argument to say first.
I'm interested to hear what you think the first is.
Okoye and Shuri.
I think that's probably fair. More so for Okoye than Shuri, but yeah.
Okoye is doing the heavy lifting in there in that one. Yeah,
like, Okoye shows up everywhere, so I'll give her that one.
Fine, okay. Let's start with Angela then. We've already gone through her in multiple videos, but for me, the big thing with her is not only is she tanky, but really importantly, and especially for these guys, long move, medium base. The things you can do with her turn 1 just really set up the entire game for Asgard, don't they?
Yep. I mean, they set up the entire game for anyone she plays in. But yeah, like midline extracts just become so much easier for you to deal with Angela. Like, you deploy Angela on one flank, you deploy Enchantress on the other one. Angela goes and gets one, walks back long. That's fine. But if someone goes for the other one, Enchantress just walks up and kisses them and goes, "This is mine now." And suddenly you're massively up in VPs. Like, you know, you go from sort of equal footing in terms of extracts to you having one more than them and them having one less, which is like a 2 VP deficit. Like,
it's a big swing, isn't it? If you're taking VPs at the end of the turn off your opponent, you're not just gaining 2, but they're losing them as well. So
yeah, and then you factor in, say VALKYRIE walking up and just throwing someone off of a point. Suddenly you're scoring more secures than they are as well. Like, it really does just build.
I also want to throw in there as well the fact that I believe she becomes more relevant with every large character that gets released. We've just had Hulk that has been made significantly better. He is now the Hulk. We've obviously had Dormammu. We know there are talks of a Sentinel. We know that Juggernaut is coming out. There's going to be a lot more 4+ size characters. And Heaven's Wrath just gets better and better the bigger the character is that you're attacking, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I've bad touched your Dormammu plenty of times.
You really have. Yeah.
Yeah, I have. You still haven't forgiven me. It's really great. I mean, also, another thing with Angela is, if you're not playing like an extract game, say you're playing on Research Station, where, you know, you can't actually pick the thing up, she's still really good turn 1 by just doing that long move into the middle of the board and just going, right, this size 4 is going into your face now, and then I'm going to attack you because I'm Angela and I said so.
Yeah, I think you can also do some really nice positional play with her as well, because whilst living ribbons means that your opponent can't modify their dice when they're attacking her, it has a weird rule, doesn't it, where you can overlap a movement tool. So she also almost acts as a piece of impassable terrain. So you can sometimes make some really nice plays with it. Just stop your opponent wanting to get where they want to be. You know, whether that's to a secure or something. If they can't go over the top of her and she's positioned in the right way, there is a chance that you can actually stop that opponent being able to get to the secure. She's also got a size 4 throw. This time it's only terrain, but let's not underestimate how much damage you can do with a size 4 throw, and it's a medium as well, which is also very nice. So on to Enchantress then, and again it's another character we've covered in multiple other videos, and there's a reason behind it. She's a very, very good 4-threat character, one of the best 2 in the game. I think we could argue
she's too good.
Some might say she's too good. Maybe due a slight I don't want to say nerf, but a slight tweak to what she does. We've been through it before, but 225 doesn't look great, but she's got that defensive tech, spurned affection, beam 3, 5 strength, just generates even more power. But really, that combination of Siren's Call, meaning that you can advance characters, and we kind of already know, don't we, that she's only going to be able to do that once per turn. They've hinted at that to us, but even so, it still makes her a very, very good character. But then really it's that Amora's Kiss that really brings it into her own.
Yeah, it is absolutely brilliant. Like, the fact that it doesn't cost an action is incredible. Just being able to, like, for 5 power, bow someone into range 1 of you, kiss them, steal the extract, and then just double medium move away is just so powerful for just turning to your opponent and saying, right, you can waste your time chasing me, or you can just let me have these VPs for the rest of the game. Like, that's what's going to happen, unless you have some sort of movement tech, like, you know, an Asteroid M, which I've used to great effect to hunt down Enchantresses. It's absolutely delightful. But yeah, like, if your opponent just is lacking in that area and just doesn't have those resources available to them, she can just sort of go, yeah, I've suddenly swung the VP state of this game, and you're not going to do anything about it because I'm over here now.
Yeah.
And if you do come over here to get me, Thor and Angela would like a word.
Well, there's maybe a couple of the people that would like words as well in the list of other characters that we're potentially going to take along as well.
Yeah.
So, Quinn, of the 6 then, we spoke before how typically a squad, not necessarily your roster, but your squad is made up of a core of 3 or 4 characters. I actually think it's a little bit harder in this one because the 4 characters that we would choose, and interject at any point here if you disagree, being Thor, Valkyrie, Angela, and Enchantress. You know, I'm kind of okay with the fact that we don't even take Loki and HELA in our roster. You may want to take Loki for some certain crisis, but I think those 4 definitely make it into the roster. And those 4 are almost definitely going to make it into your squad, aren't they? Because that gives you a total of 17 threats.
A lot of the time they will. However, I think at lower points values, obviously you can't take them all. There is actually an argument to go leaderless in Asgard, simply because Valkyrie, Angela, and Enchantress are all so incredibly good. And, like, you know, you've got great tactics cards as well, but Thor might end up actually being more of a liability than, say, you know, going lower down, say you're at 14, just taking a 2 threat alongside those 3.
You know, Okoye sits quite nice in alongside her girls, doesn't
really
she?
likes just hanging out, you know. Yeah, like, just at lower threat values, I think you do have to contemplate just leaving Thor at home.
Yeah, and the thing is that they've got so much of the tech they can spend power on that they don't really miss that Prince of Asgard leadership too much. So Quinn, let's take a look then at some other characters who we want to bring along with us. So we've got 4 in our roster already, because we know that, or potentially 5 if we're bringing Loki along for the ride. But let's start with the 2 threats, and we both pulled out the same two threats that we wanted to talk about. Both do very, very different things. We've mentioned her in every video, I think, so far, but Okoye. 2 threat bodyguard. She goes straight in the roster, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's real good.
We don't really need to talk too much more about her because everyone knows why she's so good. But highlight is she's a 2 threat. She has a bodyguard. Let's say that you have, you've used Amora's Kiss and your opponent still has an activation. Okoye is nearby. Rather than Enchantress taking that hit, Okoye takes it instead. There is actually some really nice play between the two there where your opponent has to choose to pay the power to target Enchantress to negate enchanting, and you can still use bodyguard and your opponent doesn't get that power back, which feels really bad for your opponent, but
I mean,
not.
honestly, it's just rude. Like,
It is. So Okoye goes straight in there. The second 2 threat I wanted to talk about, and this is really more for the extraction game, is Toad. I suppose similar in a way that she can, or he can pair very, very nicely with Enchantress. Enchantress can walk up. She can take that objective token from your opponent, and then Toad can walk up within range 2 and then take that objective token from Enchantress and, run to the other side in the corner of the board and really cause your opponent some problems in trying to get it back.
yeah, and then suddenly, your opponent has to choose whether they split their fire between Toad and Enchantress or they just go for one of them. And if they go for Enchantress, obviously they're getting rid of a really powerful model, but they're not helping their crisis game. They're not helping solve the issue with VPs, which Enchantress gives them.
Yeah. So I think for me, I'd be quite happy to see either of these in my roster, and I think they both give you some really nice flex options, don't they? Either at the 19 threat or even, as you said, lower down at 14 or 15 threat.
I would gladly see both of them. I think like the 2 of them alongside the 3 Asgardian girls, at 16 feels really strong.
Yeah, definitely. So let's head over to a few, actually 6 3 threats that we've picked out between us. So we'll just go through these in order that we have here. Another character that makes quite a few regular appearances in lists that we put together, and that is the bestest boy himself, Lockjaw. What's he bringing to Asgard that they don't already have?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's a very good boy. So,
he's the bestest boy.
That is, he ticks that column. The main thing Lockjaw brings is, well, first of all, Asgard like having sort of unaffiliated 3 threats because they've only got one of their own and they are quite a threat-heavy faction. They are all relatively high-threat characters. Lockjaw obviously helps you with any issue of numbers you might have. But also, teleport is really good. Just being able to go, oh, hey, that Enchantress has stolen a thing and then moved back once, but they're still in danger. Your opponent's done something, they've attacked her a bit, she's looking a little bit weak. Doggo just goes and goes, woof, woof, teleport range 3 backwards. You cannot get out all now.
He offers that out of activation movement, which, as we've discussed previously, is very, very strong. I also like, you look at how many characters in the Asgards have charges, and him being able to teleport a Thor up the board, for example, could mean the difference between Thor being able to make 2 attacks that turn, so using his charge ability and then being within range 2 to then be able to make 2 attacks, or even 2 attacks and a throw turn 1. So I do quite like that play. And he also never has a power issue as well, because guess what? He's going to generate 3 extra power per turn as long as there's somebody nearby him. Interdimensional Bloodhound is also nice. Anywhere on the board, just there you go, 1 additional attack die for everyone that attacks that one character. So yeah, I do like him as an addition. A newer character then that we both agreed we would include in the at least list for consideration, another 3 threat, and that is Ilana Rasputin, aka Magic. So a new character, one that I've not managed to get any games with, either playing against or with at the moment. She was released or teased as part of the Ministravaganza, but as a 3-threat character, she can really dish out the damage, can't she?
Yeah, I mean, like, she brings something that is desired by a lot of factions, including Asgard. She's a cheap, reliable mystic attacker. She's got that soul sword, which is an absolutely brilliant attack for a 3-threat. It is somewhat comparable to Blade's Katana without the bleed effect. She's really good in that respect. She has ways of moving herself around without using actions, which is always good, especially in certain crises where you need to get from one end of the board to the other, or you just need a slight shift. She's always got that little bit of power. She usually has that little bit of power she needs to just sort of pop around and go, I'm over here now, I'm doing this thing, I'm going to attack you, blah, blah, blah. She's just really cool. She does cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, probably one of the best mystic damage dealers in the game for the threat level that she is at the moment. Having that, a 5 strength builder, mystic builder is good, but with Pierce, it just gets even better. Okoye's counterpart, Shuri. So she's obviously bringing something completely different, and I think it's twofold, really, isn't it? First of all, some control that, whilst with Enchantress you've got an element of it, obviously with the throws of Thor and other such sort of people, we've got some elements of it there as well, but a far more consistent control than relying on a trigger. And then she also brings something that the Asgards sorely miss, which is dice modification in the form of rerolls.
Yeah, I mean, that is the main reason you bring Shuri. Upgrades are incredibly important for people like Thor. Just being able to fish for that wild and, get that incredible throw off of his strike, or even get, some extra damage out of that strike to potentially get a stagger if you've done it for Asgard. There are a great many applications for upgrades in Asgard, as there are in many other factions. But yeah, Shuri brings a lot to the table in that regard, and control is always a good thing. You're never not going to want control, especially with the way that Asgard tend to play an attrition style focus, but not in an offensive sort of way. Being able to just sort of shove, your opponent's big beater away from, your prime targets is just, once again, another really powerful ability that she brings to the table.
Yeah, because let's not forget, right now there is no limit or there is no size restriction on that push as well, which we think could change very, very.
I mean, we know.
Well, actually, yeah, we do know. We've seen the card. We do know that's going to change. But even so, the vast majority of characters in the game are size 3 and 2, so I don't see there being too much of an issue with that. Everyone's favourite Baron, Zemo, long move, charge, solid attacks, counter strike, master swordsman, and strategic genius. I mean, he brings so much, doesn't he, to any affiliation, especially these guys, because he's good enough to be in with the thick of it, so he can be within range too, can't he, of some of these bigger hitters like Andrew and like Thor.
Yeah, I mean,
so they get those rerolls.
I do like how you basically just listed his entire card there.
Because they're all good, right? That's
that was very informative. Thank you very much. Zemo's real good. Even if you ignore everything else in his kit, that strategic genius is just so powerful. Sitting him in the middle of your team and just going, okay, all of my attacks are have effectively a 50-50 chance to do more damage every time I swing.
Yeah.
It's really good. And then you add on top of that any potential triggers you might fish for. It's just, God, he's good.
Yeah, and 4 Mystic as well. 4 Mystic defense, which is, doesn't go amiss nowadays.
It's becoming more and more valuable.
Yeah, and a lot of movement as well. Obviously, he's got a charge. He's a long mover, but also then the medium advance off the back of his steel rush as well. So, Yeah, very nice. Another character that we've talked about in other lists as well is Gwen Stacy, aka Ghost Spider. So she can offer a lot of control, as we know, but she can also dish out the damage as well, can't she?
Yeah, I mean, like, if she gets stuck in the thick of things, double tapping someone with, like, a freestyle beatdown into a spider technique, you're throwing 6 dice with a throw for damage, followed by 7 dice. Like, yeah, she can really put the hurt out, whilst also protecting sort of the more vulnerable elements of your team.
Yeah.
Say an enchantress that has grabbed an extract.
I was just going to say an enchantress.
We're going to say a lot through this video, and have said a lot through this video. She's really good.
Yeah, no, she's very, very good. A very, very solid choice. And then lastly, then, one that I wanted to throw in at the very end, because I think there's an argument for any list now to look at this guy or a form of this guy. And we've put the 3 cost or the 3 threat Iron Man in here, but really any of the Tony Starks, depending on what you've got. But there's a reason behind it, Quinn, isn't there? It's that Helios laser bombardment, which works really well with any affiliation who can generate power. And as we discussed, the one thing that Asgardians don't struggle with is power generation.
Yeah, I mean, like, being able to dump just an absolute crap ton of power into that laser and just going, yeah, that model doesn't exist anymore. It's just, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Especially with some of the big boys that are out there now, you know, Juggernaut, Hulk, you know, Black Dwarf potentially coming back into the meta with some of the changes around pushes. Dormammu, some Sentinels coming up. They've got big health pools, haven't they? And the fact that you can potentially one-shot one of these characters should not be underestimated, no matter what type of list you're playing. Because guess what? A great way of controlling your opponent is taking out 8 threat that they've invested in one attack. So yeah, that's why he has gone in the list there. Quinn, on to the 4 threat characters, and we've only picked out 2 for our list. Let's start with everyone's favourite symbiote, because he is. Everyone prefers him over Carnage.
I mean, yeah.
Venom. So great damage, great survivability. I think that, you know, that survivability is something we've said, and tankiness we've talked about with the Asgardians. He also brings another very nice tactics card in the form of Lethal Protector, which again, if you've got an Enchantress on the board who's got a token and somebody can spend that power to try and attack her, it's a great way of being able to mitigate that damage against her, isn't it?
Yeah, like, well, once again, we're harking back to protecting Enchantress is really good, and yeah, it is. Venom also brings Web Snare, which is really good. Like, once again, like, you know, Asgard are an attrition list in the sense that they try to outlast the opponent, not outkill the opponent necessarily. Web Snare can be really good for just grabbing that key piece your opponent has, like, say, a Shuri or a Zemo that's in the middle of their team, and just sort of bringing them into the midst of all the Asgardians and just going, well, we're going to get rid of you because you're really important, but, you know, it's more scalpel than hammer, which doesn't seem to be the right thing to say about Venom, but that is what Venom effectively is.
Yeah, in this game, definitely. And I think as well, if Amora's Kiss, and we said we both believe it should go to be an action, if that is the case, having other characters that can then bring key objective holders closer towards Enchantress is never going to be a bad thing, is it?
No, definitely not.
Also, he's got a throw, so 3 cost, size 3 for 3, but it is enemy characters or terrain, which I really like. It gives you so many different options that you can do with that, and so many snacks. Right? It's such a good reactive superpower, especially when you have enough power then and get to use We Are Venom with it. It just feels very, very strong.
Yeah, just being able to turn around and go, your attack did nothing to me, and now you're on like 2 health. feels real good.
Well, even better than that, right? Your attack did nothing to Enchantress. It then did nothing to me, and now I'm going to destroy you for it. Feels like it's a bad day at the office for your opponent. On to then the second of our 4 threats, and I mean, she needs no introduction again. I'm not going to try and say her name again, although I think I did it okay last time, but Medusa, we think she's one of the characters that's up for the chop, don't we, in terms of bringing her back down to earth a little bit. But even with some changes...
She's going to be seen to.
Even with any changes, though, she's still going to be very good, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, like, they're going to nerf her, but I have enough faith in AMG that they're not going to nerf her to the point of obscurity. Like, she's still going to be prevalent, as every model in the game should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, currently, Medusa is really good for a number of things. You know, she's great at beating people up. She's great at repositioning people, not only enemies, but also friendlies, and she's got a throw. Like, she can just do so much scenario play. It's insane.
Yeah, and that builder of hers, I'm going to say it, the best in the game right now. The best builder in the game for my money. Yes, there are builders that do more, but on higher threat characters. I think for her threat level, the best builder in the game. So all of that great tech she's generally got enough power, hasn't she, to be able to do it, you know, as much as she wants.
Yeah, like, she's a bit silly. I mean, but yeah, she's a bit silly.
She's very, 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 very silly. 2 other characters then, one of which we have seen an errated card for, and the second one that we haven't, and I don't think we will. I think she's okay.
I don't think we're going to have Scarlet Witch.
I think she's okay where she is at the moment, but yeah, Scarlet Witch.
Some people complain about her, but I think she's probably fine where she is.
She's really solid, isn't she? She's not the tankiest of characters. She, you know, if you focus in on her, you can take her out very easily. But she's an absolute powerhouse. I wouldn't say she's a glass cannon because she does include those failures on her defense and dodge dice. So that does give her, you know, that 3/4/4 is significantly better than what it looks like.
Yeah, she's counting 4 out of 8 as successes. So you expect her to get half as many successes as she rolls dice, which is decent. Yeah,
no, absolutely. But yeah, really good. And also, again, comes with a really nice tactics card. Bit of overlap here, isn't there, in terms of what she brings with her tactics card and the leadership, because it is essentially the Asgardian leadership in a tactics card, but one that she can spend as much power on in a single turn as she wants, or even out of turn, actually, which is nice.
But the far more important part of Winds of Chaos is the ability to protect the opponent.
Yes. Yeah, so dishing out Hex, Root, and Incinerate for 1 power. Like, it's ridiculous.
And just picking any one of those. Like, you know, we once again, harking back to sort of the basis of an Asgard team's plan, which is outlasting the opponent, not by killing them, but by just sort of standing there and being tanky. Just shoving Hex onto a bunch of enemies.
Yeah.
Just going, okay, you basically have a static number of dice now. You're just never going to spike against me massively. Like, it's just, it's real.
I also don't mind Root. You're almost doubling the effect of the Asgardian power benefit there, because you're completely penalising your opponent for wanting to use superpowers. So the last of the 5 threats, and indeed the last of the character for the non-affiliated characters that we're going to go through, Big-Headed Murdoch. We've seen his card. We know there's some changes coming, and those changes are not massive. Really, it's a round bow to the will. He's only going to be able to use it once per turn, rather than being able to use it as many times, but a character only being able to be moved once. And actually, he's got a bit of a buff back, Quinn, hasn't he, in that his rerolls are now during the modified dice stage.
You say that, but actually there is a sneaky nerf in that change as well that a lot of people haven't caught on to, which is it's now limited to once per turn.
Do you know what? I had not caught on that. And that is...
which is really big.
Yeah, because it means that you can't go fishing as much, or with, doomsday chair and things like that. So interesting. I didn't see that. So yeah, that's really good. But we know what MODOK does. Even with those changes, Quinn, he's just an absolute powerhouse damage dealer, isn't he?
I mean, he sits in the middle of the board and he just sort of kills anything that goes within range for him. Like
Yeah.
that is what MODOK does.
Yeah. And, who doesn't like that? Who doesn't like a big-headed, psychotic, murdering part robot thing
I mean,
in
I've gone on
their
record
team?
plenty of times saying
I
I don't
know,
like.
you definitely have, yeah.
I like it a great deal more now that it's actually balanced, but
And then the last thing with MODOK is obviously he brings along lackeys, which allows characters to, or one other character to make an additional move action. I don't think you're often going to have MODOK and Angela together, but if you do, she gets so much value from that.
I mean, I'm going to say it again. Great way to protect Enchantress by having a,
Or that as well. Or that as well.
This is mine now, and also I'm going to walk away 3 times because I hate you.
And what we've actually done here, guys, is we've actually paired them up, Quinn, haven't we? So the 4 tactics cards we just spoke about that are character bound. So Lethal Protector with Venom, Whims of Chaos with Scarlet Witch, Aim Lackeys with MODOK, and then Helios with Iron Man. The idea that, and the way that we've thought about it, is if we take one, we take the other. So we're bringing them as a package, especially now that we get the 10 tactics cards with us, because they're just, each of those characters are just so much stronger with that tactics card as well. Speaking of tactics card, Quinn, we have 2 affiliated tactics cards, don't we, to take a look at. Let's start with the first one, and I think it's still good. I think they've got 2 very good, but I think the lesser of the 2, for me at least, which is Rainbow Bridge. It's really good. Pay 3 power, move range 3, or place range 3.
I'm going to say it again. Really good for getting Enchantress out of dodge.
Yeah. Key thing with this, guys, it's Asgard characters. Obviously, you're not going to be able to play, you're not going to be able to use other characters, but this is another one that you can play on your turn, but characters that are not active can use this as well. So any number of them. So great to get characters up the board. Also great to get characters out of sticky situations, let's say. If they've got some extra power to spend. And then their second card, Odin's Blessing. We spoke about this one briefly when we were talking about other characters, but essentially, if a character would take damage, they can spend 3 power, and then they reduce the amount of damage suffered to 1. So you could roll a 40 dice Helios Bombardment and do 35 damage against Enchantress, who is holding an objective token. She spends 3 power, and that's negated to 1. So with some of these big attacks that are coming out now, the potential for this to just ruin your opponent's day is quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really high.
I do like it. I say I like it. I hate it because I don't play Asgard too much, and it's one that I usually forget about. But I think it goes into. I think both of these cards go into every roster. There's no reason to not take them, and I gather 9 times out of 10 you're probably taking these into your actual squad as well, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So on to restricted cards. Quinn, we spoke about restricted cards, how people should be looking at these once they have, looked at the affiliated cards. Which are the ones of the 6 that we've got stick out to you as the ones that you really want to bring along?
Definitely. I mean, we assume that Rivals is going to be restricted.
Same assumptions are made here, guys. So we're saying that all you've got has moved to the banned list, and then Bitter Rivals has taken its place as the restricted card.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the time you're going to want Bitter Rivals. You can use it as a defensive thing a lot of the time of just going, this character is just making all of your characters worse. And also, I think Medpack is definitely important here, just because Asgardians are less likely to be one-rounded, and in conjunction with the leadership, that's essentially a heal of 4 damage, which is big.
Yeah, heal of 4 damage or a heal of 3 and removing a condition or something like that is, yeah, super, super powerful. I agree. I can't see any reason to take any other cards. Yes,
mean,
there's an argument for patch up, but you're getting less return for your power, and you can only do it on other people as well. So if there is somebody, if somebody isn't in range, it becomes almost
yeah,
useless.
it's not great for someone that might be stranded somewhere. I think you could have an argument for taking Brace instead of Bitter Rivals, depending on what's in your meta. But yeah, like damage negation once again is good. It's just that Rivals allows you to. It just gives you that turn where you can suddenly switch tack and go right. Well, go die.
Yeah, yeah, and it could also be a way of forcing your opponent to move a character out of range 3 of where they are as well, right? Because they could be affecting somebody so much. So if they've taken a Zemo or another character who's buffing everybody around them, like a Shuri or somebody, it can force them sometimes, can't it, to move that character away without you even having to do anything against that character as well. So I do like that almost as a control piece as well.
Yeah. I also like, bringing advanced R&D very important for getting a turn 1 steal with Enchantress or, a turn 1 for Asgard. Like, there are multiple uses for that card in Affiliation. It's just, really good.
You spoke about this when we were talking about advanced R&D in the Wakandan list, and I think you're right. You need a plan for it, and I think Asgardians definitely have a plan for that card. So with those ones that would take us up to sort of 5 or so in the list. What other unaffiliated cards do you think could be put into consideration?
I think Disarm actually is.
Do you know? It's almost as if I knew you were going to say Disarm, Quinn.
It's almost like I say it every time.
But no, again, for a list who want to outlast their opponent, it's a great way of being able to mitigate a big hitter, isn't it, on the opponent's team?
Yeah, it is. Well, once again, I mean, really good. Just being able to go, hey, I was going to say reality corvus, but that's not likely considering how Black Order operates. But say, like, your Magneto is now rolling 4 dice with a reroll rather than, 6. It is a massive difference, not only because you're getting rid of 2 dice, but potentially you're getting rid of even more by virtue of, them rolling less crits.
Yeah, definitely. Or against a, opposite Scarlet Witch or, somebody else who has their own dice modification or, gets to roll extra dice for failures and that sort of thing like that. So yeah, no, I do like that. I also think with the wide plays that you potentially have with Asgard, I don't mind Blind Obsession in there as well. I think you can quite often find yourself on the flank with a character. So it's got to be the right crisis for it, but I don't mind that going in the mix as well.
Yeah, I think if you end up in a situation where you're having a duel on one side of the board between 2 characters and the rest of the battle is going on elsewhere, just being able to pop that up, even potentially as a proactive defensive thing of just going, right, well, I'm getting 2 extra dice against you for the rest of the game because no one else is coming over here. So you can either run away from me or we can fight and I'm going to do better than you are.
I mean, yeah, even if you're a 2-threat character and you're coming up against a 3 or a 4 threat, those 2 extra dice make a massive difference.
They do indeed.
Quinn, lastly then are the crisis cards. And more specifically, as we've done in each of these videos, we'll talk about a couple of individual crisis cards, but more the shape and whether we're more concerned with the extract plays or the secure plays with Asgard. We've already spoke about what Angela can do turn 1. She's one of only 2 characters in the game, isn't she, that can move up to a center extraction point, claim the objective, and then move back out of harm's way. But in terms of a crisis setup, which of the 6 letters are we looking at as being more favourable for these guys?
So I don't think it's necessarily about the letter for Asgard. I think actually with the new changes of crisis selection being completely random from your three, I think Asgard actually really like bringing flip secures. So those are
Okay.
secures where you have to pay power to secure them in order to control them. So things like deadly meteors, spider portals, things like that are really good because you're generating extra power every turn, right? And effectively, that extra power is allowing you a free interact with that secure. So, you're effectively playing the game like a normal faction, whereas your opponent is playing at a power deficit every turn if they want to keep up on scenario.
The thing I also like about that is, with the exception of Enchantress, put her to one side for a second, but the other three core characters, Thor, Valkyrie, and Angela, the only two flips that we've got at the moment use either the defensive stats of your physical or your energy, don't they? And, fours across the board for Angela and Thor, and threes across the board for Valkyrie. So, more often than not, even if your opponent has somebody stood on the point contesting it, you've got a really good chance of flipping that anyway.
Yeah, you would sort of go, well, this is mine anyway. And obviously Enchantress becomes the weak link there because
she does.
However, Enchantress's main job is hunting down whatever extract is on the
She's
table.
the extraction play, isn't she? That's what she's out there looking for. Even with Valkyrie's lower roles, and actually to some extent Enchantress's lower roles, they both have ways of throwing that character who's contesting the point off the point, right? Asgardian Might for Valkyrie and Siren's Call for Enchantress. So if she really does want to try and take a point, she can just move that character out of the way, turn that point, and then probably murder the character as well.
And, there's no one there. It's a 75% chance for her to flip it, which, I'll take those odds any day.
Yeah, pretty good. It's pretty good. So are there any particular crises then that we want to play, right? What are the ones that we want to play with these guys?
In terms of extracts, I think they're pretty happy with any of them. That's sort of like the strength of Asgard is they don't care what the extract is. If it's researcher, which is effectively an extract that isn't an extract, they don't mind because they can still stand in the middle of the board and just punch people. That they are Asgardians after all. But single extracts like Alien Ship and Scrolls are really good for them because Enchantress can just go, "This is mine," and then it's exacerbating that difference of VPs a lot of the time. And if you've got cubes or spider infected or anything like that, they don't mind that either because Angela can go grab the middle one, and you can end up being on top in that regard. It's just that there are probably no extracts that Asgard don't like.
The one that I'm not too fond of, and because it doesn't really do anything for them, is Montesi. It's one that I would probably not put in my roster. It's not one that I'm concerned about coming up against.
Yeah, I don't think you choose it voluntarily, but you just sort of shrug and go, okay, when it gets dropped against you, because you're just like, well, I'm just going to take them anyway.
So we already know that core of 4 characters is 17 threats, and we know that's the most common. That's the most common number in the game. Do we prefer to flex up from that or flex down from that, do you think? Or is 17 that real sweet spot where not many other affiliations can compete?
I think ideally you want to be playing at 19, just so you can slot that 2 threat in there, like your Okoye or your Toad. Otherwise, I don't think Asgard particularly care. It depends on how good your Thor is feeling on the day, because if he feels like he's going to roll crap, you probably want to go lower, because then you don't have to take him.
It depends, doesn't it, on whether Fat Thor or Thor, how he's going to look in the new Love and Thunder movie turns up, because Hemsworth looks like an absolute beast. So are there then, from a secure perspective, are there any secures that we want to try and avoid? Are there ones that we don't have a plan for, or where other affiliations just can do them, that much better than us?
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that, Wakanda is going to be better on Gamma than they are. But yeah, like, it's sort of a negligible thing because, I mean, Wakanda are really great at controlling you, but you have Enchantress and Valkyrie to just sort of go, these just go away.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Like, you don't mind double moving back into position and just getting them out of position. Like, I don't think there's anything in particular you want to avoid. Intrusions, the new one, is really weird because you sort of stand on it and then you can teleport, but you lose extracts you're holding. Like, that doesn't seem like a thing Asgard particularly want to play into, or at the very least, they're going to ignore the actual interesting bit of the crisis with the interaction.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you've got, doesn't it? Because and keep me honest here, Quinn, C runs across from left to right on the board, doesn't it?
It does.
So I gather there could be a scenario where you've got an enchantress on the flank, right? She's gone and picked up the extract, and obviously what you're not going to do is move enchantress over because you would then have to drop said extract. But I gather there's an argument to say that you could use it to then bring another character over to be there, nearby, whether it's an Okoye or even a Toad or somebody like that to come and grab that off her and run away. But yeah, it's a real strange one, isn't it? Because you also take a damage as well on intrusions, which doesn't feel good at all. But maybe Asgard a better place with it because they can just mitigate that damage every turn by healing themselves up. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely supposed to be explored. It's just that my gut reaction is that probably not the thing they want to see most.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, Quinn, we spoke about how we can win with Asgard. We've got a couple of different options, haven't they? I like the way that you can switch things up very, very quickly with them. But who are we going to struggle against in terms of other affiliations? Who do we not want to come up against when we're running Asgard?
I think it's an interesting question because there's nothing that immediately sticks out, right? Asgard are just one of those sort of factions that are so generalized. Like, they have everything they need and they have it in like very compact packages that there's nothing they're particularly afraid of. And Thor doesn't like mystic attacks because that is where he's weakest, but other parts of your list really love getting targeted by mystic attacks because Enchantress rolls 5 dice against them. Yeah, like, I guess anything that can kill them quicker than they can anything that can kill very quickly, like a Brotherhood or, a Black Order, can be an issue for them just because, it doesn't let you play into that game plan of sort of outlasting your opponent. You need to do something drastic instead.
Yeah. I think at that point you've almost got to switch on the offensive, haven't you, and actually start your own offensive play because Asgard can do that, right? Angela can absolutely dish out the damage if she needs to, as can Enchantress. In fact, let's be honest, as can Valkyrie, as can Thor. They've all got huge spike potential. If Thor feels like he wants to roll dice on that particular given day. So yeah, okay, well, as we've always done, me and Quinn are going to go away now. It will be a matter of moments for you guys, but we'll probably deliberate for the next 20 minutes. We're going to put together a quick starting roster and then have a little bit of a conversation at the end around dual affiliation and how we think that may be potentially a better option to go with this faction. So we'll see you guys back in a couple of seconds. So guys, we've put a very quick Asgardian roster together for you guys to be able to try out. Now, no surprises here. We've started with the 4 core characters that we've got. So Thor, Angela, Valkyrie and Enchantress for the affiliated characters. And then to complement them, we've got Baron Zemo, we've got Medusa, we've got Okoye, we went with Scarlet Witch over MODOK, and then we've got Toad and Venom. For the secures, we've taken Deadly Meteors, Mutant Madmen, and Portals Overrun. And as you'll notice, they are all the interact secures there that you can take. And then we've taken, let's start from this side, Struggle for the Cube. We've taken Spider Infected, and then we've taken Deadly Virus, particularly for Deadly Virus, because we know that we can put a plan together for that one with characters like Toad, like Enchantress. You can put together a really nice plan for that one. Our 10 tactics cards then, we've got Advanced R&D, Bitter Rivals, Blind Obsession, Lethal Protector, Medpack, Odin's Blessing, Rainbow Bridge, The Whims of Chaos, and then Marked for Death and Disarm. So Quinn, we've had a conversation, didn't we? And, obviously at 17 threat, you are more than likely going to be using the 4 Asgardians. Can you see any situation where you're playing 17 and that would change, or?
There might be a situation where you feel the need to go wider than 4, where, you drop 4 and then you take like a 3 and a 2, so like a Zemo and an Okoye or a Toad.
Yeah, I gather depending on what it is. And I think that's the key thing, is that Angela is so good that if we have to drop a 5 threat, Angela is better than the leadership that Thor brings, isn't she?
Yeah, and I think that's something that, a player will have to get comfortable with this roster, is going leaderless sometimes. Like, it's just something you're going to have to get used to, because it will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other sort of combinations there you want to run through, Quinn? Let's have a look. Deadly. We spoke about Deadly Virus and how we have a plan for that. So what would the plan for Deadly Virus be then? What characters would we be taking along?
Right, so you're taking the 4 Asgardians, and then on top of that, you're shoving in Toad. Simple idea being that you managed to get all of the legacy cures, through Angela grabbing them from the midline, through Enchantress getting them off people, and then eventually, over time, you build power on Toad to the point where he can find his keeper, both of them off, and then just explode.
Yeah, because getting rid of a 2-threat character for 8 VPs is more than likely going to win you the game, isn't it, at that point?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I do like that. And then, as we mentioned, for all of those flips, we've got 2 18s in there as well. So, you would probably lose Thor in that situation, wouldn't you?
And then get like a 4 and a 2.
I was going to say put in a 4 and a 2. Quite like Venom in the mix as well. So we've got a few different options that we can go for. Lastly, then, Quinn, we spoke about this in the Wakandan video, and I think it's prevalent in this video as well, because we're only taking 4 of our affiliated characters. This is prime for a dual affiliation roster, isn't it?
It is, and I think probably the most prevalent one you'll see is a dual affiliation with Wakanda. You're already taking a Okoye, so you need to throw in Black Panther and Shuri, and then you've still got 3 spaces left for your tech picks. Like, probably a Gwen, because she's really good at 15 with a Wakanda. Probably keep a Zemo in there. Probably shove a Toad in there as well, just in case. Like, yeah, you've got plenty of options. You've got plenty of room to fit in, like Wakanda Forever, things like that. Especially with the addition of 2 more tactic card slots.
Yeah, because that's all we'd need. I feel like you could very easily drop Scarlet Witch, drop Venom, and drop Medusa in this case. And I think they are replaced with Black Panther, Shuri, and potentially Killmonger. You could argue that you may want to keep Medusa in there for Killmonger, but I quite like having him in the list as that aggressive option. And then, you only need 2 spots, don't you? So, you could drop a Marked for Death, or... in fact, actually, we'd be freeing up 2 cards in Whims of Chaos and Lethal Protector as well. So lots and lots of flexibility now for dual affiliation, isn't there, with the 10 tactics cards?
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, guys, hopefully that was useful. You guys seem to be really enjoying these videos. So leave us a comment down in the comment section below. Give us some feedback on how you've had success with Asgardians, if you change anything up in this list. And, some of these characters are very interchangeable. If you would prefer to take a, Gwen rather than a Venom, or you want to take a MODOK rather than a Scarlet Witch, you can mix and match those up. The two that I would say really do need to be in there are the 2/2 threats, Quinn, in Okoye and Toad. I think they give you so much adaptability at either lower or indeed higher threat levels, and often become quite key, don't they, for some of the extract plays.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, guys, let us know down in the comment section below what you think. Also have the Hulkbuster giveaway, and there'll be a link down in the description below to the video that gives you all of the details on how you can enter that competition. Quinn, anything else from yourself?
No, just bye-bye, I guess.
Well, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.